Hey everyone, welcome to MenTalk, where we dive deep into the stories and lives that shape us. I'm your host, Chris Cook. Today I have a very special guest and close friend of mine, Dylan. We've known each other since kindergarten, and he's one of the most dedicated and loyal people I know. In this episode, Dylan shares his incredible journey from facing personal demons to finding his passion and helping others through behavioral health and transitional living. Get ready for an unfiltered conversation about real life experiences, struggles, triumphs, and the power of recovery. Dylan, tell us about what you do and where you're from, just a little bit of background about yourself.
First off, thanks for having me. Yeah, this is awesome. And I'm Dylan, and I grew up in Sandy, in Utah. So I make jokes about it all the time. Like I grew up on the rough streets of Sandy, Utah. It's like non-existent, right? But right now I work in healthcare, so I run an outpatient behavioral health facility.
Okay.
And I also own and operate a transitional living for
Gotcha.
guys coming out of residential care, mostly young adults, and still in school for social work. I'm a licensed substance use disorder counselor. I've been doing that for over 8 years. And I mean, I love what I do. I think mental health is a huge thing. That's my biggest passion, right? And so, yeah, I mean, that's like a quick little snippet. I'm in long-term recovery, and I'm not ashamed to say that. And it plays a big part of like my whole story. So I'm just blessed every day to be alive. It's awesome that we get to have these kind of opportunities and discuss like real stuff. So
real stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Keep it unfiltered. Nothing's off limits. Dylan's been a really close friend of mine. We've known each other since kindergarten, which is a long ass time.
Yeah.
And he's been a good friend, probably one of the most loyal people you'll ever meet. So I've appreciated Dylan my whole life.
Thanks, man.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
So break down what AD is and then vitality. So what is basic, better question, what ND mean to you?
My why in life is these businesses, really. And it's, so A&D was started, it stands for Anderson and Dusoe, but it's AD psychotherapy. And it's an outpatient behavioral health facility. Been operating, it opened up in 1988. My parents started it.
Year we were born.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's wild. Yeah. It's been
Crazy.
around a while.
Yeah, a long time.
And so they started really taking off on their own back in 98. And obviously I was not living the greatest lifestyle until I got my life together. So while they were building that up. And then when I finally decided to get my life in order and see what I wanted to do, I decided to step into any role possible at my parents' place because I had a lot of trust still to build with them. So it was an honor for them to even actually say, hey, we'll have you answer phones. And I was like, all right, I'll do this one. And that really just started to initiate my passion for helping others. And when I say it's a passion, it has to be a passion because if it was for the money, this is the wrong place to be in, right? If you're trying to make the money out of it. But I have a true passion for it. And so that kind of transitioned to, I started Vitality, which is that transitional living. And I started that back in 2017. And the concept is basically, it's a very high structured transitional living for young adult men coming out of residential care for whether it be for primarily substance use disorders and then also some mental health diagnoses. But we help them get back on their feet in a very high structured setting to help them know what it's like to be an adult. For a lot of these guys, they don't know what that's like. Yeah. And I lived that life too, maybe not to the extent that some of these guys I deal with. It's a cultural difference that I have to adjust to. And but yeah, that's like a quick elevator snippet of like Vitality and A&D. Like it really, A&D, without A&D, I wouldn't have been able to do Vitality. Yeah. And without my parents, there wouldn't be A&D. It's this full circle approach that I've always looked at now where I'm like, the authenticity of it, right? What my parents did and what I have the honor of doing now has launched me into why I started Vitality. Yeah. That's really what it is, man. And I'm in it for the long run. I'm pretty sure I'm going to do this for the rest of my life in some capacity. Like I said, it's just a blessing every day to work with everybody I get to work with now. Family, the clients, everybody. So yeah, that's it. That's what I do.
And I see that like within you and how much you're dedicated to it.
Yeah. Thank you.
And I think even like when we're out, whether we're golfing, on trips, and it just goes back to the conversation we had about this. You're like, yeah, I'm driving separate on this trip in case I need to leave to go pick someone up. Yeah. You're just a dedicated person to your craft, dude.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. And one thing I wanted to ask you this about A&D,
Yeah.
like early years growing up, what did that look like when you go visit your parents at the office, or things
Man.
that you saw, or like what stuck with you?
Oh man, that's a great question. I love that question. I've never actually been asked it in that capacity. And it's like, that's a great way to start it off for me, because when I share my story to like other people and I'm like, I grew up in a treatment center, and they look at me like I'm crazy, because I'm like, my parents worked in a treatment center, right? So my parents have worked in mental health my entire life, right?
Yeah.
So my first memories, my parents worked for a bigger healthcare organization for the majority of the 90s while they were still doing consulting for A&D before they really took off. But my first memory is at the receptions desk of this hospital, at this mental health facility that my parents worked at. And my entire childhood is around that concept. And particularly when like people who know my story, it's really ironic to see where my life went being around that surroundings. When it was always, I laugh, you see me joke about it all the time because it's funny to me. I'm a guy who was like, I was smoking crack, bro. And I'm like, my parents own a treatment center also. And I'm like running into people that have been to my parents' treatment center while I'm out there. And it affected their business. I'm sure. And seeing the struggle, because it was a grind for my parents to get that going. And that's one thing I really hold close is hindsight's 2020 now, when I just see the dedication that both my parents did to start this company on a whim, where they were like, we want to have our own little corner of this profession and do treatment and help people the way we believe is the right and ethical way. Yeah. And it took a lot for them to get there. It did. And so I think I've had great mentors because of that. Like my parents have shown me the way, and then I had to actually follow it. And it took a while. Yeah. My whole life has always been around helping people with substance use disorders, people struggling with mental health diagnoses or crisis intervention, just because of what my parents have always done. Yeah. And it was something I never thought I'd do.
And then even like on top of that, it's just like our friends too.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Like, I've been around that as well.
Oh yeah.
So let's go back. You've grew up with A&D with your parents, seen that whole thing transpire, and then you started Vitality. Let's take it a step back and let's just talk about like Dylan in his early years.
All right.
So 2004 and 2007, what'd that look like? What'd that look like to you?
And that was really, what's the best way I could put this, man? I used drugs and alcohol. That's right when I started using drugs and alcohol. And like the difference between me and a normie, and when I say a normie, that's what people in recovery call them. But it's like that non-alcoholic, that one person like you who can have a drink and just walk away. It's a concept I still am like, why? Are you thirsty? You should just have some water, because you should have some more drinks. So when I started using drugs and alcohol that early time in my life, it took me out of my shell, right? I finally felt like I wasn't this person without any confidence and this person that was struggling to fit in, right? So I loved that feeling. And 2004 to 2007 was really when I started like experimenting with that aspect. It wasn't a problem yet, right? It was still something that would have started affecting everything. I got kicked out of school, high school dropout. It took over my life. So from 2004 to 2007, that was just me really starting to get experience. Because I was growing up, my family, both my parents were like, you should never really use substances. Both of us are in recovery. It's genetically something that you are predisposed to. And I'm like, yeah, but why do people do it? So I figured it out.
So you had those like questions.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, I get that like people shouldn't do it, but why do they?
Yeah, so, curious as you are, yeah.
Yeah, so I just took it from that approach, but it took over my life. Like I never expected what happened would happen. So those first couple years right there, that was pretty crucial.
And you don't have to answer this. We can skip like the next thing. It's just a question that came to mind. Like when you first took whether it was weed, drinking, like what, and asking those questions, why to your parents, like when you first took those things or drank those things, like what did it do for you? Was it more of like you felt like in a secure space, or did you, like you said, you brought you out of your shell? Talk a little bit more about that.
Have you ever gotten just like a really good hug?
Yeah.
And it's like from a family member. Yeah. It's maybe when like you got back from some trip or something, you hadn't seen somebody in a while and you gave them a hug. Yeah.
Like the hug you didn't know you
it's just
needed.
so good to see you, right?
Yeah.
That was how it was the first time I took a sip of alcohol. Not like that sip and then immediately, but I felt it go down. I remember this like warm feeling and like my shoulders dropped.
Yeah.
Where I was like, and I was like,
Yeah.
where has this been? And that's that. I mean, to me, that was that feeling. That was
Gotcha.
that initial feeling. And I was like, I need to have more of that. Does
Yeah.
that answer it for you?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's weird because it's looking at it now, that's a big red flag. But yeah, that's how it felt for sure.
For sure. But you got to give yourself some grace. You didn't know until you did.
Oh, absolutely.
You know,
and
like,
how defiant I was growing up. Don't do it, Dylan. I'm like, okay, that's why I'm going to do it.
Yeah. And then 2007, you ran into your first legal issues.
Yeah. So, and that's why I got into so much substance use early on is that's how I got kicked out of high school originally is I got in trouble with marijuana. I got caught with a bag of weed in front of the school, in front of everybody. And it didn't feel good. Like I didn't feel good about it. And that's why I got kicked out of school. But that's also when I went to court. I got put on juvenile drug court probation. I started getting drug tested every week and I still wouldn't stop. Right. And at this point, like in high school, I was just I was just a massive pothead. But granted, the whole time it was a crutch, right? Like it was covering up something in me.
Yeah.
And I still couldn't stop even with probation telling me I couldn't do it. So then I started going to jail or like juvenile detention centers. And that first legal part of my life, I got kicked off juvenile drug court because I turned 18. And then they literally just released me. So it was like I shouldn't have completed, but I did. Not juvenile, but they put me in adult and then they just graduated me. And so I just, this whole time, so 17, because that same time I went to treatment. Am I okay to go into that too?
Yeah,
that first part of treatment?
Do it.
And
do it.
Because that's how I had my first experience with treatment is I'm trying to figure out ways to use substances while not getting caught. Okay. And so because I'm doing that, I had to start experimenting with other drugs that I thought I'd never do, where it was like cocaine. I started doing that kind of stuff once I got put on probation. And so when I got really strung out on cocaine at 17, my parents drug tested me. They have drug tests, obviously. They run a treatment center, right?
Yeah.
So they were just like, so before I could even make up an excuse, I was on a flight to Florida to a rehab center. And the day I got there, or 2 days, 2 days after I got there, my PO showed up to my parents' house to arrest me because I would failed another drug test.
Yeah.
And so they're like, he's in treatment. And it was just
and
they're like, we're great, we're happy to hear he's in treatment. When I did learn a lot in treatment, but I was 17, I did not.
Yeah.
I was like, I can't smoke crack.
What was your time there in Florida?
That's where I was really introduced to talking about your feelings.
Okay.
As crazy as that sounds, like my parents did it for a living. I knew that, but this was the first time I was in a capacity to do it. And so that was pretty interesting to see what it's like to hear other people's input when you talk about your story. And you're like, wow, I didn't see that. Or someone telling you, like, that's really tough. So that was like my experience with treatment too. And then I got back home. I stayed sober for 6 months maybe, and then got graduated drug court. Supposedly graduated drug court. I just got released.
And maybe we could come back to that towards the end. Or I could just ask now. So if you were the court looking down at yourself, what would what would you have done to you looking down at that point? Because you said you were juvenile and then you turned 18, but then when they put you on the adult thing, you were graduated. Yeah. It's like looking back, what would, you don't have to answer, but what would you do in that situation if you were the court system looking down at you to try and
if I could have done something different?
Yeah. What would you do different in that situation if you were the court system?
My take on the justice system is so skewed. Not skewed, it's just I don't have a good take on it.
Gotcha.
But what I mean by that is I think maybe a very big legal intervention at that point may have stopped me from doing the crazy shit I ended up doing, right? But I really don't think so, right? Gotcha. So I think everything played out as it should. Okay. Just because of what I was introduced to, because I didn't get a crazy drug sentence. But I'm very lucky I didn't get one. Yeah. I'm very lucky. It's ridiculous. I should be in jail. I should have been.
Very fortunate that you're here and where you're at.
Yeah, right? It's pretty crazy. Right? Yeah.
And then let's talk about 2008 to 2012. You graduated with your GED, and then you fell back into
That's
and
when
some
it got
other
bad.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about it. Break it down.
So 2008, I'm 19 years old. I decided I did get my GED and I barely got it, dude. I barely got it. I literally had to pay a tutor for like math. It was like, I didn't go to school when I was in school. So I was not very educated. And so it was hard to get that, but I got it. And then I was literally I don't want to say I was a victim to it just because I don't like that word that much, but I was part of that generation of the Oxycontin boom, right? Oxy 80s, man. And that was like when opioid epidemic was just starting in 2008. Not just starting, but for me, that's when I was exposed to it at this capacity where it took everything from me, bro. And it was like, so this was even before I went to my last treatment center, right? It was like, if you needed the definition of somebody who struggles with substances, right? It's me. And what I mean by that, it's because anything I took to a full extent, I couldn't stop. I could not stop. So with oxys, I started taking them and it's cost a lot of money. And the more I learned when I went back to school and you hear about what happens to the brain because of the disease of addiction and what it takes over, it literally affects your fight or flight response, right? I stole money. I did whatever I could to get what I needed. And I wrecked a lot of lives. And what I mean by that is like relationships with family. People couldn't trust me. I wouldn't trust me. I did crazy things that I would not do sober.
Yeah. Talk about,
Treatment.
No, talk about
The money thing.
the money thing.
Like of what I stole.
Yeah.
Oh man. So my mom, bless her. Bless my mom.
Tammy, she's great.
Yeah. She's amazing at what she does.
She's
changed everybody. She's changed a lot of people's lives. And
the ones that we know.
But yeah, and she knows everything there is about how to help your kid when they're struggling. And she did everything she shouldn't do with me. And what I mean by that is she enabled me, man, because she couldn't. It's such a weird dynamic. I don't have kids, but I know that bond where you'll do anything for that person.
100%.
And so I could only imagine that struggle internally that my mom must have had. I'm her youngest kid and I am blown out and I can't afford anything. So I used to steal her debit card for 5 minutes. She would walk away from her purse for 5 minutes. I'd steal her debit card. I'd go to the ATM because I knew her PIN and I'd take money out and just put it back in there. And then I'd gaslight her. She'd be like, how's there money out of my account? And I'm like, Mom, what, you think I have access to your account? And I did that kind of stuff to get what I needed. And then she would still help make sure I wasn't homeless when really that's what I needed.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Because that's what changed for me when my parents took that stance with me. Because when they're like, Dylan, you got nowhere to go. I'm like, I better get my shit together. Yeah. So the money thing was like, dude, that's what was the hardest thing for me to look back on. I'm like, I did a lot of my family dirty because of that. I did my amends, but I'm blessed that they forgave me and they trust me now.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about just before the early recovery. Like, what happened in 2012 that you were just like, I've got to do something. I've got to switch. I've got to change up. I got to have goals. What was that like? What made you
get my shit together?
Get your shit together, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't me. That's the best way I can put it, man. It wasn't me that got my shit together. So I am that definition of I got clean off of oxys and heroin and all that, but then I just became a stone cold drunk. And it's very accessible, man. It's like, all I needed was $15 a day.
Yeah.
My oxys were $100 a day, usually, sometimes, right? I have $15 a day. That's no problem, right? And I got it took over my entire life. Alcohol took me deeper than any other substance I ever took. Like ever. I mean, it controlled every fiber of my life.
Something you can get very easily.
Yeah. And it was like, and it was such a rationale for me, man, because I was walking around blacked out saying, I'm sober off of heroin.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I'm living a chaotic life, right? And it's unmanageability is the best way it's put. It's unmanageability. I can't control my life. The drink is controlling me.
Yeah.
And in 2012, it's my body that told me that.
Yeah.
My body was like, so I tried to get sober a couple times back in late 2011. And what I mean by sober, like I tried to go through detox at my house and I had a couple seizures. So one of the things with like alcohol and benzodiazepines it can be life threatening to detox off them because you can have a seizure and die. I didn't think I was to that point. I thought like only 60-year-olds and people older than that had that issue, but I was 22. I was 22, living in a house with 2 other people, and I had a seizure in my room. And it was like, I woke up in the hospital. I'm getting told I'm an alcoholic. Hear you, got it, don't care. Left. And I did that 2 more times in detox. And then I went to a psych ward. I went to a psych ward because...
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so because all the alcohol and the drugs are, man, it's a substance to my underlying issues, which is the mental health. And that's the one thing that, like, people need to hear. And especially families who are like, why can't he just stop? Like, why can't he just stop you? That's his medicine. Like, my depression, what cured it was blacking out. But then it got to the point where the alcohol turned on me. The drugs turned on me. So I'm trying to drink more, and it's not working.
Yeah.
And I become blackout, I become angry, and I become suicidal. So I had several suicide attempts. And so I had 2 detox days, and then I went to a psych ward for a suicide attempt. And then in the suicide attempt, it was like in a blackout. I don't remember it. But and my first one was, I was living at a house in Collinwood Heights, and I called my sister in like a blackout. And I threw myself off to 2 stories, basically. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, I laugh at it now, and I don't mean to laugh. As a person in recovery, I see it now, and I'm just like, it's 2 stories. It's 2 stories, Dylan. You're just going to really hurt yourself. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's like, I wake up in the hospital the next day, and I'm like, what the hell happened? Yeah. And my sister, Amanda, is just sitting there just petrified. Who is this? What happened? And so I got put in a psych ward for a week, got out, did the same shit, blackout, and then it all came to a head. 2012, February 9th or 10th, we had lost a friend to suicide.
Yeah.
And we were celebrating. I put this in celebration because alcohol was part of this guy's story, right? And I didn't know that until the suicide, right? And we did that. We were like celebrating by drinking.
Yeah.
And I remember before I blacked out, I was like really angry about it. So that was like a Saturday. I wake up and I'm in a hospital. That's the next thing I remember. I was at a friend's house, and I wake up, and I'm at a hospital. And I remember waking up, and I'm like, where am I, right? And I look out this big window, and I see downtown Salt Lake. So I'm like, okay, I'm in Utah, right? Like, I'm like, all right, no, I'm still here. And I'm in a hospital, and I remember this nurse coming back in with an empty bucket. Not like bucket, but one of those pans or something. And she's, oh, look who's up and about. And I'm connected to wires, bro. I'm connected to IVs. And it's a Thursday, I think. So I had blacked out Saturday. And it wasn't that I was in a blackout. To speed it up for you.
Yeah.
I tried to get sober before, had a seizure. So that night that happened, who took me home? The last one of our friends to see us, and I can say it because John Ben was the last one. He took me home. The man saved my life. Yeah. Like, he took me home, and that saved me, dude. It was the worst night, but it saved my life.
Yeah.
It was like a chaotic night, but I hate when I cry, dude.
No, you're good. You know what I was thinking? Like, when he committed suicide, that literally, it changed so many people.
Yeah.
And like, you were the first one to acknowledge it and do something about it. And it's like almost like everyone just tried changed after that.
Because I think, like, dude, to me, right, that was a guy I judged, like in high school. I'm like, he's going to make it. He's going to have 2.5 kids. He's going to do all this shit, right? And he didn't make it.
Yeah.
That was terrifying. I'm like, dude, if he can't, I'm screwed.
Yeah.
And so that was the night. Everything, like, I don't remember that whole night, but I got into an argument with my dad and woke up, and my parents knew what to do, and they took me to the hospital. And I kept having seizures, so they had to put me in a coma. So they had to put me in and slowly had to start tapering me off of what they call Librium to help taper you off of the alcohol.
Yeah.
Because every time they tried to do it at the basic level, I guess I kept having a seizure. So they had to like daily, very slowly drop the dose so I wouldn't seize. And that's why I woke up Thursday. And it was like, people talk about that aha moment in their recovery. You're like, dude, you want to talk about unmanageability? I got no job. I just destroyed another family like relationship. I was living at my parents' basement, right? Free. And I destroyed that. I'm in a hospital and I'm 23. I'm like, I'm 23. And I was like, dude, I'm really not going to make it. And that was what it took. And what spring-forwarded that was like, dude, I was so blessed, bro. All I had to do was this. I just had to reach out my hand. My parents were like, I got put in the great treatment center, got to pet horses and shit, and I really healed, bro. And I took it for real.
Yeah.
I took it for real. And that's when, I don't know, when I did, I made a call to a lot of our friends, and I said, you're not going to see me for a year. I said, it's nothing against you. I got to get my shit together.
Yeah.
And for me, it was like, there's no way I can be around any alcohol. I'll drink. That was my big thing. And our friends, bro, that's part of a social gathering every time.
It is every day.
And so I was like, that first year, I'm like, I can't do it. So everyone respected that. And like John Ben would come to Sober Living and pick me up and go golfing with me. And it was like,
he's such a good dude.
Dude, he really is, bro.
He really
and like,
is a really good guy.
And yeah, that was the beginning of my story now.
Yeah.
Is like my story took off from there, dude. I got introduced to recovery. I got introduced to meaning and purpose. But but that doesn't take away the fact that like life still happens, bro.
Well,
you know?
Yeah, for sure.
So I don't know. I felt like I went off topic there, and I know I got a little.
You did not.
So, but yeah, that was like that treatment. Obviously, you can see it had a deep impact on me. It changed everything.
So, what was the conversation like with your mom and dad when you wanted to go back to school?
Okay, what was this, like 2013? I'm almost a year sober.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, all right, I want to go back to school. And I asked my parents, like a self-entitled asshole I was, because it was like, hey, those college funds that like my older sisters, Caitlin and Amanda, had, like, how about I get mine for school? And they're like, my dad's like, that was your treatment fund. And I was like, oh, you remember that really nice place you went to? I'm like, yeah, it was awesome. It saved my life. He goes, that's where it went. I'm like, okay. So when I went back to school, I had to get like student loans just like everybody else. But it was just funny because it was like, even at a year sober, I'm like, I'm Mr. Got my shit together. And then my self-entitledness, that's what's funny too, is I was like, thanks for treatment. Thanks for all this. Now, will you pay for my school? And it was just like so much to learn even that early on. Yeah. But that was that conversation. But I still decided to go back. I went back to school. But it's been a very slow process. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I went back to the University of Utah and I did the SUDC certification, which is the substance use disorder certification. So that's in 2015. So in 2016 I got licensed, and I've been able to I get to do group therapy with people. I do individual counseling in a certain capacity, and I'm just not finishing up. I like to say that, but I'm like a year and a half away from finishing my master's in social work. But it's because
it's a long time coming.
Yeah, it's a little bit, bro. I tell people too, it's like there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and I tell clients this, right? So when they come into me and their life's in shambles, bro. And sorry, like I'll bring this back around.
Yeah.
When a client comes into me and they're like, life's shit, they don't come to me on a winning streak, bro.
Right.
Like they don't come to treatment like, hey, I've just heard
You're
great
seeing
things.
them at their worst.
Yeah. And like I tell people, like, you don't walk to an AA meeting because of the Yelp reviews. Like your life's shit. That's why you had to go to that thing. You know what I mean? Yeah. They come to me and I tell them, I'm like, I just need you to know I'm here to reassure you of one thing. There is a light at the end of the tunnel and it's not a train. And that's what I have to reassure them, because that's what they see. That's what I saw. It's like, it's just a tunnel I'm walking down, bro. And it's ending nowhere. And my life's chaotic. I don't know how to deal with the depression. I don't know how to talk about my feelings. And it's just a light and it's a train. And that shit's coming at me. But now it's just a light to like new beginning, bro. It's like meaning and purpose. That's what I try to stick it back around. Like, you want to help yourself figure out what your why is. Do something that gives you that stomach feeling, not the ego feeling, not the ego
like,
self.
I'm gonna be rich here. I'm gonna.
Yeah, dude. It's like, I hate that stuff, man. But listen, I get people are motivated by that. But the shit I feel, bro, sometimes you can't buy it.
For sure.
You can't, dude. You can't. And the only thing I can compare it to is heroin. As funny as that sounds, right? That was some good shit, right? Wild, but like, when I get to see that, and it had nothing to do with it. I'm not trying to say, oh, look at us and look what we did. But like, just like someone saw the light turn back on in my head, I've seen that happen to others now. Yeah. And I'm like, bro, hell yeah.
How does that seeing that change in someone, because you change yourself, and then seeing that in someone, how does that feel for you? What does that do for you?
If I'm being honest,
Yeah.
they're too far and in between, man. It's not, it's stacked against us. I see a lot more pain than I see healing,
Gotcha.
which is why when I do see that healing,
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, hell yeah.
Yeah.
That's why you got to hold, and I tell our clinicians, like my therapists that work at A&D, I'm like, hold on to those ones. I was like, that's the difference right there, because that's what we got to hang on to.
Yeah.
Because so that feeling I get is I have to hold on to it, because I may not feel it again for a while. I may have to, people don't get to come back to recovery. They don't get to come back to treatment, dude. They could relapse and that's it. They're dead.
They're dead. Yeah.
Or the other thing I see too, you get sober and you can't deal with your mental health. And so I see people with 10 years recovery not getting therapy, and then
Right.
they feel like they can't go on. So it's the whole thing coming full circle. You got to address if it's substance use and mental health, but you have to address it, or else that will be a train. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right?
No,
Yeah.
dude, that makes complete sense.
Yeah.
And so you started working for the family business.
Yeah. So that was like, I took over the family business back in 2015 because my dad got way sick. And so like, it literally was like in 2 nights.
Yeah.
My dad's like giving me numbers of these accounts and stuff. And I'm just like, what the fuck is happening?
Yeah.
I'm like, I answer phones, bro. You know what
You told me to do, and now
I was
I'm
like,
taking over.
because he was not doing well. And like, thankfully he's better, right? Like he got a lot better, but it was like really touch and go for 3 months. And
Yeah.
I just was handed the keys to a castle, bro. And it was terrifying because
I bet.
it's what I wanted.
Right.
But at the same time, it was not at the time I thought it would. I thought it'd be 10 years from there. I was like, dude, I haven't even finished school and I have to, but the one thing is I call it Tammyisms, right? My mom,
Yeah.
right? And people, her clients call it this, Tammyisms. She goes, Dylan, just keep doing the next right thing and things will work out. And I'm just
That's
like,
awesome.
Initially I want to be like, shut up, mom. I was like, dude, I live off that.
Dude,
I
that is
literally live
such
my
good-
entire life off
that's
that.
such
It's
good
like,
advice.
Dylan, continue to do the next right thing and it will work out.
That is such good advice.
don't know
Your
how.
mom's so awesome.
Yeah.
dude.
And so it's with that mentality and with her guidance. And then my dad got better, but I stayed in that administrative role.
Yeah.
And then I was able to do a lot of cool stuff with the company. Got us out of the hippie hut, which is what people called it.
Mm-hmm.
It was literally as big as a double wide trailer that we were at for 30 years almost. And I bought a new building. It's like a mile and a half down the street from their old building. And it was a big risk, but I made it happen, right? And I remember the whole time going through that process, I still have these mental health issues, right? Like I still have this depression stuff that's happening through this process.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's telling me it's not going to work out. It's telling me it's not going to work out. And thank God for the people around me. Thank God for the people you surround yourself around during those times.
Yeah.
Because that's what helped. My dad being like, Dylan, look what you're doing. Look what you're doing. Hey, like someone else pointed it out to you, right? Hey, do you not realize like you made this happen? And I was like, yeah, but not without you. And I go, Dylan,
But you did this. Yeah.
it's impactful, especially when it's your old man,
right.
you know,
Oh,
but
for
it
sure,
was like,
for sure.
but making sure you have that kind of people around you, man, because the depression has always been real in my life still to this day with that. But I've just, dude, I started running that business and it's crazy the kind of stuff I see now. And I love what I do. I love it. 100%. I don't think I'm ever going to do anything different. And John Ben's probably pretty upset that I said that because every day he's telling me, he's like, Dylan, you're going to work yourself to death. You need to do something. I'm like, this is what I'm doing, dude. And it's awesome because I was so happy to hear you, like, because that's another guy. He's worked with me at A&D. He was a counselor there. He worked at Vitality with me.
Yeah, so he like knows.
He knows that shit. And he saw us grow that too, but it was just, it's been a cool experience. I don't know what I was trying to get at that. Basically saying it's been terrifying and it's been
Rewarding.
growing. It's been very rewarding, but it is tough. It is tough.
I bet the day you're dealing with a lot of people, it's not, maybe that was a bad comment, whatever. Dealing with a lot of emotions.
Oh yeah.
When people coming in with high emotions, you're probably just,
it's a lot.
Yeah. And I would assume it takes the right person to understand that and handle it. And you've got that.
And I think it's so important. And granted, I need to take this advice is people who work in this capacity in human services. When you work with direct human care, where you're like, you got to have self-care. Because first off, you're working in an industry that's definitely not paying you enough.
Yeah.
So you have to have the passion for it, but you're also going to get passion fatigue. you're also going to realize that you're not working on your own mental health issues because you've got 8 different clients that you got to make sure they're doing okay. At what point do you take a step back? Because then you see therapists and people like myself work themselves to the point of chaos, and they fall apart 10 years down the road.
So then what does that look like? How do you take a step back? Hey, I got to take care of myself. I've got to separate my work and then life.
Yeah.
Like, how do you do that?
I don't right now. And that's why I said I should take what is important. And there are times I have self-care things that I've done that I need to just go back to. It's the same thing of like when you stop going to the gym. It's like muscle memory shit.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, just start doing that again. Just start whatever. Like I went to the gym. I used to go to the gym 4 days a week. And I haven't been in like 9 months. Right.
Yeah.
But it's because, I have to take care of this or I have to take care of that. But then I get to go on.
You have to travel. You have to drive. Yeah.
But the cool thing is like where I do find self-care is the connections, like what I'm doing right now.
Yeah.
And connecting with somebody I care a lot about, who I think is doing great stuff, and those authentic conversations, bro, like hanging out with our friends, even when it gets a little chaotic. Yeah. It's just, I feel at home.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I just feel at home.
It just feels,
And I don't even drink anymore. Some of these guys, they get wild. Right? And so I'm just like, I don't know. I'm just like, I'm home because they support us. Everyone supports each other. We don't. So I just love that environment.
And that's one thing that I always say with our friend group. It's just I feel personally, I just feel like we're bound by just our own trauma and then trauma that we've had together. Like
trauma bond, bro.
The trauma bond. I literally feel like that's what it is.
It is.
There's literally no other explanation than just that.
Oh, I would 100% agree with you. And it's pretty wild how those kinds of things, those deep impacted things can keep people connected. Keep people
together, and everyone's thriving.
Yeah, it's
crazy.
My mom wants to write a book on us. That's what's funny about it. Because she just goes, Dylan, you realize like none of you should be here. I'm like, I'm fully aware.
Yeah.
I'm fully aware none of us should be here. And like all of us is just, but bringing it back to just meaning and purpose, because we found our why. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like people have found their why, dude. That's what it is.
Yeah. I was thinking this too when you were on your way over. It's just, even your mom said, we're so fortunate, not only like to be here, but just to be friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
Relate. And I feel like if people were to see us together, like they'd be like, how the hell are you guys friends? Nothing.
Makes no sense, bro.
It makes no sense.
From a book cover view. From a book cover view, we are not the same book, apparently. The same book. Right? I don't know. And we all are so goddamn close.
Yeah, really
like,
close.
Dude, I don't fight. Right? I can't for 2 reasons. 1, I can't. And 2, it's just not in me. Yeah. Right? It's just not in me, but I still have that loyalty too. Yeah. Where it's like, if someone's hurting my friend, I'm like, I'm coming at that guy, and like, it's going to suck.
We don't want to, but whatever, dude.
Yeah, I'm going to get beat up, but I have to do it still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then 2015, you graduated.
Yeah, so 2015, I graduated with my substance use disorder certification, which was awesome. And I thought that was where I was going to end it. I thought I went back to school. Yeah. And I went back to school.
How was from graduating and then looking back to 2004? Like
Dude, looking at it now, wrapping this all up, and sorry if I went off a little on topic and stuff.
You're good.
So
looking back.
Yeah, so having it come full circle, looking at 2004 to now, like looking at it come full circle, it's pretty, I don't know, man. It's been a journey. It's been a crazy journey, but it's not done. It's not done by any means. But I'm not unique. That's the one thing I want people, like, I love sharing my story in a way that, like, I want people to hear it in a way that they find that in themselves. I don't want it to be, I don't want to be the person. Does that make sense? I don't want to be the, like, oh, that guy. Like, I'm great if I motivated someone, but I don't want to bark up my story just to say what cool of a guy I am.
Oh, yeah.
When it's, every one of us have this capacity. And the reason why I know that is because I'm here.
Say that. This camera, say that camera.
Everyone has the capacity to do this. Everyone does. Like it's that terminal uniqueness that I think stops us from actually wanting to do what makes us happy. Yeah. It's like the terminal uniqueness in a way of, I can't do it because of these reasons, right? Or you don't understand because you didn't go through what I went through, right? That terminal uniqueness, right? Yeah. It's the beauty of a human being, and it can be the death of a human being, because if I have to look at this as a human being in general. I know that you have a soul, I have a soul. That's how I believe it. We are people, like human spirits. Like we have something in us, and I know that by looking at it through that lens, there's no other way for me to look at it than I'm losing my train of thought right now.
You're good.
But it's very interesting to see how it comes out, how it comes full circle now, looking at where we've been and what I've come through, what I've gone through.
Mm-hmm.
It's been very interesting to see that, dude, I did nothing different or that somebody else did.
Yeah.
I literally was like, hey, Dylan, take this roadmap. I'm like, just follow it. And I did.
Yeah.
That's all I did, man. And the greatest thing about this whole thing is like, it wasn't my idea. It wasn't my idea. That was the one thing that like I had to hold on to early when I was trying to get my life together is if it's not my idea, it's probably a good one. And I ran with that.
Yeah.
As crazy as that sounds. And now I can trust my own thoughts and intuitions. But like before, that's why I know there's nothing unique about it. You just have to find the reason. I don't care if it's that little spark, bro. And I tell clients that too. I'm like, I don't care if you have this little bit of willingness to get your shit together, whether it be the courts or you don't want to leave your wife and kids, but you can't stop thinking about suicide. If it's just that little bit, that's all you need.
Right.
To grow on it. But you have to allow yourself to grow on that. And it's patience. It's all patience. It's like the 3 P's of what my therapist has told me. Patience, practice, persistence. Patience, practice, persistence. I'm like, yeah. Because I'm an alcoholic, man.
How does she break that down to you?
He breaks it down to me where I'm trying to learn these new behaviors, right? Like I've learned, now that I've taken, even early on in my life, when I took away the drugs and alcohol, I had to learn new behaviors, right? And he's telling me, you've got to practice, you got to be persistent, right? Patience, practice, persistence, like in everything I did, right? Whether it be going back to school and I don't know how to study, be patient, keep practicing, and don't stop doing it, right? That's really what has always helped me continue on the next step forward is, dude, just keep doing it. It'll become a practice. And next thing it's part of what you do.
Keep doing the right things.
Yeah, that kind of shit.
Literally. It goes back to full circle like with what your mom's saying.
What's wild to me is it's such an easy concept, but it is so hard to find.
Yeah.
If it was that easy, everyone would do it, right? You got to find that in you, and everyone's got it. Fucking everybody. So everyone's got it, dude.
2016, your dad got sick, so you officially took over
so
CEO.
And then I officially took over that time when he got sick. And I've stayed in that role ever since then. And that's been very interesting. It's hard to wear a clinical role or have a clinical role with a client and then also have this administrative role. Yeah. Where it's, hey, man, that was a great session. I need your copay. You know what I mean? Because I'm also running that business, right? Yeah. And it's a fine line to walk now, right? I have to keep the lights on, but I also want to make sure people aren't going broke to get help. Does that make sense? Yeah. I could go a whole other podcast about that shit.
I think and we could do it another time too. And then you started talk about how Vitality came along, like how all that transpired.
So when I started Vitality, I saw the need for a transitional living that was successful. Mm-hmm. And the only way that could happen is with structure. So the quick rundown of what treatment looks like for someone that I work with. A young adult guy comes out of a residential treatment center, does 30, 60, 90 days worth of care. Then they come to a place like Vitality, which is known, I don't like to refer to it as a sober living because it's way more structured than just a basic sober living. It's a transitional living. But they go to a place like that where they start trying to live more independently, start applying the skills they learned in treatment in an outpatient setting, because they'll also be going to outpatient treatment as well. And so I wanted to have Vitality. That was like a missing component I saw in this state right now. Is like I saw that something that wasn't bridging that gap between someone going to residential and outpatient care, because that's a big step. Right. Residential, man, I just told you I was petting horses. Like, I had a chef I'm in a nice area. I'm safe. I leave there, I can do whatever I want. Really. It's an overwhelming feeling for anybody getting out of that setting. So you need some help. Yeah. And so transitional living is where I thought that need was, where they get case management, real life skills. It's don't talk about it, be about it. Now that you've talked to all of this shit and stuff about how this is what I want to do in my recovery, let's be about it now, dude. Get a job. Let's do this. So that's why I really liked Vitality, bringing that into that, dude. Gives those guys finding their why. That's all it is.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. What are some of the struggles within the Vitality, like with some, because they come there when they're trying to recover from drugs.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you see where like they fall back into it, or where do you see where you can see like a switch where they're just going to go back and you're like going to lose them? Whether let's say there's loss of them leaving,
mm-hmm.
but there's also loss of them losing their life, literally. Like
yeah. Oh yeah.
Overdose.
The
So
stakes, as far as how high the stakes are.
Yeah.
The difficulties I see, like when I see a resident or one of our guys going back down the road that led him here, right? It's old behaviors. I don't care who it is, right?
Yeah.
It's always their old behaviors that lead them back down to that trail, right? And it's really easy to grab back onto those. And so a good example is like a client who starts becoming late for curfew, right? Like, hey, man, why were you late? Next thing you know, he's being defiant towards you, like trying to push back. And you're like, what's going on?
It's like a snowball effect.
And then you try to poke at it, and then they're not hearing it. Then they shut down. Then they give me the big FU, and
it's like, well,
they're out. But that's the other thing, particularly with substance use disorder treatment. It's important for people. I don't care who you are. You can't own somebody's recovery. You can't own it, because then you got to own their relapse. So I tell even my employees there, it's like, it's not, we do the best we can, man, but we're dealing with a cunning and baffling, powerful disease that's telling these guys fight or flight, that they're going to, it's almost like they feel like they're going to die if they don't go out and do this.
Yeah.
So it's not us. And there is, and I mean that in a very umbrella way, where these guys, when they do go down that road, it's so hard to try to get them back into that realm.
Yeah,
of what I call it the garden of humility.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, bro, let's come back to this garden of humility we were in.
Yeah.
Right. Where I'm like, where you're not the coolest guy in the room.
Right.
And you don't know what's going on. Okay, let's go back to that so you can receive feedback.
Yeah.
That's the one thing I always ask them when they are trying to leave. I'm like, are you willing to hear some feedback from me right now? Because if they tell me no, then why are we even having this conversation? Like, your decision's already made, man. So let's not waste our time.
Yeah, let's not. Yeah.
Right. But if they tell me that, they're like, yeah, I just have a minute. That's when I'm like, hey, man, let's just take a step back, please, just for 2 minutes.
Right.
Leave after this. The power of pause for these guys is huge. It's just wait a minute and then wait another minute.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
impulsiveness
that
you're trying to, that's really a lot of their old behaviors is they're acting. They're like, oh my God, I have to use. So I have, and it's, dude, you don't need to. You just take a seat, dude.
So we've talked about this before. We've talked about the struggle, not only that the young men, women are having, the parents that are influencing, enabling, like, what does that tell us more of what that looks like?
That's actually usually that's the harder part.
Yeah.
That's actually the harder part. Yeah. And I only mean it's a harder part if the family is not also getting care, because it's not just their kids that are in treatment. You need treatment. And I don't mean, you need to go to residential. I'm just saying you need some help as well to navigate through this chaotic process of trying to help your loved one.
Yeah.
And it has to be a third party. It can't be someone in the family or something like. So when they're not receptive towards that, it's really hard to ring them in on why we are doing the actions in this client's treatment at that time.
Yeah.
They're like, they're at Vitality. A lot of these guys, which is I have to, because of the structure of my program, and it's expensive.
Yeah.
And that's the downside of what we do, right? It's expensive to run. And so I only get a certain group of people, right? Doesn't mean that they all still want the help. Every guy that comes to me wants the help. But some of these guys like have a car. And I'm like, you can't have your car.
Yeah.
You can't have your car. And his parents are like, I bought him that car, right? And I'm like, but you got to understand, like, the process, right? And if they don't trust that and they start interfering with that treatment, that's when it's really bad.
Yeah, then it's like you lost.
Yeah, because you've lost that alliance.
Yeah.
You've lost that alliance. And sometimes it is the clinician's fault, or sometimes it isn't, but it's still having that open line of communication.
Right.
But the family has a lot of work to do too. And some families may hear that and be like, why do I have to do the work? And I'm like, hey, man, this is just part of the process. Yeah, it sucks. Do you think your kid wants to be in group therapy right now? We're all doing shit we don't want to do right now. And that's the only way we're going to get out of this.
Yeah. What about, and we also talked about the allowances that families give their loved ones too.
You can literally love a kid to death, is what I tell some of these parents. It's just like them, they're trying to break old behaviors that are learned, just like their kids are. Yeah. And the way that some of these families may have shown affection is through shit. Through stuff.
Yeah.
Hey, you got that 4.0, here's the car. or you got on the swim team. Here's, let's go on a trip.
Yeah.
Right. So that's how they learned to interact with their kid, is literally like, this is how I show I love you. And now trying to break that cycle, and and sometimes they don't.
And that's like years of it.
Sometimes it's generational, right?
Yeah. We just talked about that with John Ben, like the generational things.
Yeah. Oh yeah, man. And it's the generational aspect of, I even tell families, I'm like, you could throw hundreds of thousands of dollars at this problem. And if he doesn't want it, it ain't going to work. It's not going to work. You can buy all the treatment in the world. You can't buy recovery.
You can't.
You can't. Yeah. And so when families don't hear, that's when I see kids die. And I'm not saying it's the family's fault by any means. Of course not. But
it's their decision at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's the kid's decision at the end. But that's the tragic thing about this disease, man, is it takes the whole environment down with them. All the family's trying to do is save their kid's life. And they're doing it with the best way they know how. And when there's not an intervention of some sort, that almost always ends in disaster. I've never seen somebody throw money at a problem and it worked for this problem.
Yeah. So you have that side of it. What about you see a family and they're bought in immediately, or it takes just a little bit for them to be bought in? What does that look like usually?
Oh man, I love doing the family work when they're receptive.
Yeah.
And when I see I don't want to say when like it's rare. It mostly all the time the family's receptive to getting the help as well. So we run like a family group and we talk about the family dynamics, and we give the family an opportunity to say, now it's your turn to tell them how their actions have impacted you.
Yeah.
In a setting that is safe and that that you're both going to hear some feedback. So we may sit a family down, and it's, you're me as a drug addict, and I'm Tammy. You stole money from me, you did this, you did that, and I just have to sit there, and I have to listen, and they have to be, okay, and then once they get done telling Dylan what exactly they said, they're like, Dylan, what did you just hear your mom say?
Gotcha, yep.
What did you hear your mom say? And it's sometimes always totally different. Oh, she just says she's not happy with me, she thinks I'm a piece of shit, I'm like, she just says she's scared that you're going to die. That's what she said. That's literally verbatim what she said, but that's what you heard. That's something to look at. That narrative, right? It's, dude, you heard something 100% different, right? Yeah. Doing that family work, that's where you see that change happen, bro. Because then they start having that conversation together.
Yeah.
Of let's talk about it.
Yeah.
So when you see that family come in and do that work, that's the kind of shit. That's when you see it start coming to fruition. It's been awesome. But that's the beauty about what we do, man. All of us get to do now.
Yeah.
We get to live life, and you have to actually allow yourself to live life. And patience, practice, persistence. That's the one thing.
Practice, persistence.
You got to do that.
Do the right things. The right things will come.
Yeah. It's really what it is, man.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome. If you could just, from a business perspective, an A&D perspective, your life perspective, if you could just give whoever just any knowledge or just a little spill, a minute, 2 minute spill, like what would that be?
The one thing that like I said, dude, everything I say is unoriginal. I heard it from somebody else, but I grab onto it. My dad, my old man, he goes, Dylan, have a reason for everything you're doing and know the reason. That to me, it's a simple concept, but it's know what you're doing and know why you're doing it. If I could tell anybody that, it's know why you're doing it and knowing that why is sustainable. And if I could give you an example, it's if you're chasing the money, you will never be happy. I don't care what you do for work.
Right.
I really don't care what you do for work, bro. I don't care if your job is to make money. If that is the only reason why you're doing that job, you're DOA, bro. You're living half of the life I'm living because you're a fucking slave to something you have no control over. Does that make sense? It's like, so know your why, know what you're doing, and know what you're doing and know why you're doing it.
Yeah.
And if it feels wrong, it is. Trust your gut. There's several times in business for me, from a business perspective, employee, whether it be an employee I hired, and I'm like, I don't feel good about this, but he's very qualified, and it ended poorly. And so trust that gut intuition. And from, this isn't just like an A&D perspective, right? It's just from the whole dynamic of just someone who's trying to get through life and trying to be successful in their own way, whatever that means to them. Don't stop doing the why, whatever it is. I don't care if you stop. Oh, Dylan, if I stop doing this right now, like I told you, I'm going to do it for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
But trust me, if it don't work out, I already know I'm going to go and be a stand-up comedian.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll ever be good.
Yeah.
But I know I'm
This is facts.
just don't ever stop trying to
Facts.
do stuff.
Yeah.
Don't ever just be content. Like to me, and it's not content. Don't always want more, but don't always just settle for being like, I am done. Like I'm done. And we can never be done, dude. It's like the only way you can is continue to be passionate about whatever you do.
For everyone listening, remember that help is always available. And as Dylan said, never give up on finding your why. Stay strong and keep pushing forward. Until next time, this is Chris Cook with MenTalk, signing off.